this should be fun tonight. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Inside the Jungle. It's Wednesday night here at CincyJungle.com, fresh off a humiliating, we'll say humiliating, I think that's a good adjective to describe what happened on Thursday night. Bengals losers 24-3 to the Cleveland Browns at home, snapping their home winning streak. And now they go on the road for a tough stretch of games this Sunday down to New Orleans to take on the New Orleans Saints. Should be a fun one. Glad you could join us here, the Cincy Jungle. I'm Nick Sierberling, hanging out. It's the Fearsome Foursome again. Anthony Cosenza over on the left coast. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing well. I'm definitely doing better than the Bengals are, I would assume. Man, just I don't even know what direction we're going to take this show tonight. I'm sure we're going to probably have to talk about that debacle, but yeah, I don't know how much more I could defend some of the usual suspects on this team, be it coaching or certain positions. It's getting tough to defend certain performances, and Thursday typified that.
Well, plus you add the fact that it was a short week, which means we had to hear about it on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it just feels like it's just been piled on with what happened last week. Mickey Menser back on the podcast with a nice looking beard there, Movember in style for you. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. And all I'm gonna say tonight is bring it. I'm ready for the people that are ready to come at me.
Okay. All right. Well, we may have that happen. We will see. And I'm chuckling at the fact that somebody in the chat room, Chase Elise, says, "Is that a porn star taking Scott's place?" Scott with the stash, looking good, my man. How you doing, buddy?
No doubt. Like I said, after the show, I will be delivering ice cream.
All right then. Yeah, let's get right into it, guys. I think we all four of us will agree what our worst was Thursday night. 10 of 33 for 86 yards. Mickey, I know how you feel about the quarterback. I'm gonna start with you first. It's hard to defend that.
Yeah, but it was a terrible performance. And this is where people shut off because I'm not jumping on that bandwagon with my pitchfork and saying Dalton's the worst ever. Let's talk about this. We couldn't win primetime games before Dalton. Everyone knows in the NFL there's a walkthrough. You script the first set number of plays. Everyone is on the same page, knows what's going to happen. Yet on the fourth or fifth play, we need to call a timeout because we don't know what the heck we're doing. Tell me how that team was prepared, and tell me how that was Dalton's fault. We ran the ball 3 times before that. That has nothing to do with our quarterback. The tone was set for that game at that timeout, and I'm not saying that was why we lost. Dalton had a terrible game. A.J. Green had a terrible game. Newhouse, I would argue, had a worse game than Dalton. He was a revolving door on the end. It was absolutely ridiculous. But the fact that all these people are like, it has to be Dalton, and like they cannot wait to throw that, no other quarterback would have done any better for us. Throwing out little, quips on Twitter like Brian Hoyer is better than, like, it's ridiculous because the fault's not at the quarterback position. We had, a quarterback in Carson Palmer for a while that is until he blew up his knee, is in first place, playing out of his mind right now. We lost with him. There's a common theme. Dalton's never going to be the guy that puts the team on their back, but I just get so upset in games like we saw where everyone's terrible that they pick that one person and they're like, this is the reason why we're never going to take that next step. Jeremy Hill, for example, had a decent run, fumbles the ball, never fumbles. Like, no one showed up to play, so I'm not defending Dalton in any stretch of the imagination. He was absolutely terrible. But to just, throw a name out there is dumb. That was a pitiful team effort, and I think it starts at the coaching. And people in the chat room are proving me right. Like, how many picks did Dalton have? It's dumb. The whole team was bad. I don't understand. Like, no quarterback was going to come in and save that game.
All right. I hear your argument. I do agree that it was a complete team failure, not just offensively, but defensively as well. You look at the numbers there. They gave up 170 yards rushing. But Scott, whether it's fair or unfair, and we talked about this last week on the show about Dalton deserving praise when he plays well and doesn't get it, but obviously what we saw in the narrative has been Dalton since Thursday. Is it fair or foul?
I say fair and foul. Nick, you and I tweeted back and forth about this a little bit, and certainly you can't defend Dalton's play. He was absolutely brutal. But to Mickey's point, Dalton was not the only problem on Thursday night. There aspect of Thursday night. I mean, no one played well. The offensive line was terrible. Jeremy Hill's fumbling. A.J. Green had 2 more drops, which, by the way, I brought that up this week on Cincy Jungle. Here's a guy that disappears in every big game, and nobody says anything about it. He had 5 catchable passes thrown his way. He dropped 2 of those. It may not have changed the game, but they both would have been first downs. And, for the most part, it didn't feel like the game was close, but the game was within reach most of the game. So, yeah, I mean, Dalton was terrible. I mean, inexcusably terrible, but not the only problem on Thursday night. I mean, it went from coaching to line play to the defense. It was just bad all around.
AC, Thursday. I will say this: Thursday night was awfully rough. I'm very thankful that I took the night off of work for that. But I mean, it was an all-around team failure, and Dalton takes a large portion of the blame because he's the quarterback, and that's the name of the game. Sometimes that's what quarterbacks have to do. They have to wear it. 10 of 33. When you compare that to what Brian Hoyer did, and a lot of talk going into that game was about the conditions and the wind, but Brian Hoyer seemed to do okay with those same conditions, and I think that might be another reason why people are piling on to what happened to Andy Dalton.
Yeah, and you can't win in the NFL with poor quarterback play and poor coaching, and I think that this game you saw both of that. Dalton had, I think it was the worst game ever by a Bengals quarterback in terms of quarterback rating, and he just did not play well in any facets. There were players that were crossing the field that were wide open. Jermaine Gresham, a 6'6" guy, and he manages to overthrow a wide open Jermaine Gresham. I can't excuse the play that Andy Dalton had, but I still think that is secondary to the coaching of this football team. And I still look at Marvin Lewis, and I look at these big games, and supposedly the most mind-blowing thing of this was that we heard that the Bengals had been prepping for this game during the Jaguars week. So they've been prepping for this game for a long time, and that's the performance you get? I don't understand what the week of preparation is like, whether, even in a short week. I don't understand what they're doing to create these kind of performances, and I'm going to try and not butcher this, but Herm Edwards I heard on the radio the day after this game, and he was talking about kind of an analogy with this, and it's like having your neighbor kick down your door, come into your house, sit on your couch, order you to go get them food and the beer out of your fridge, tell them tell you that it's not the right beer, you send them to go, they have you send you to go get the right beer. They use your toilet, they eat your food, and they leave. I mean, that's kind of what the Browns did to the Bengals on Thursday night. And I think, yes, Dalton is to blame, but I think you really have to look hard at this coaching staff, especially the head coach, for reasons there.
The tone was set early, like you said, Mickey, about having to call timeout. They looked flustered. We saw them run the ball for a first down on 3 straight runs, and then they decide to air it out, and immediately you've got miscommunication between Gresham and Dalton.
Yeah, I mean, that was a bad play, but piggybacking on what Anthony said and what I started with, some of the same themes after this game were the exact same things we heard after the playoff game last year, where the San Diego defense comes out and says, and the Cleveland guys, I mean, it's almost verbatim, that the Bengals showed them nothing they weren't prepared for. They knew the plays when they were lined up. They knew the audibles when they audibled. That's ridiculous. And I mentioned something on the site, and people jump on me. There was zero creativity, and it's just ridiculous. It's just like Tecmo Bowl. If you know the play, it's not gonna be successful. The Browns knew the play, and I hate that we're doing this new thing on the show where we're comparing Dalton to the other quarterback. That quarterback was surrounded by a team that was amped up. Their receivers were open. They were getting separation. If you noticed, like when the Browns had like 3rd and 4, the Bengals were lining up their corners, with a 10-yard cushion. Like there was nothing we were doing that was pressing the Browns. There was nothing we were doing to change their game, and they dominated us. So we can pick apart like individual plays, but it's the whole freaking game was I mean, you can't have 100 yards of offense and say, oh well, this one person didn't. No, it was just ridiculous. And the running game wasn't there. I disagree with the benching of Hill after the fumble. You kind of understand that concept, if a guy burns you in a game, but he was the only freaking piece of the offense that was moving the ball, and they bench him after a fumble. I'll argue right now that Gresham, showed up, took some licks, and stayed in the game. It was just bad all around. But we can go back to picking on Dalton.
Well, again, I don't want to place all 100% of the blame on Dalton, because I do agree that this was a total team failure from the top down. But I think when you look at what Cleveland was able to do, Scott, at the quarterback position, Brian Hoyer didn't have to beat the Bengals. He just simply had to manage the game. I mean, you look at his numbers: 15 of 23, only 198 yards passing. He didn't burn you through the air. He had no touchdowns, and more importantly, no turnovers. But when you run the ball for 170 yards on 52 carries, you're going to lose.
Yeah, and that goes back to coaching. I take a look at Hugh Jackson, and I actually had a bigger problem with Hugh Jackson on Thursday night than I did with the Indy game, because going into that game, you take a look at the weather conditions. It was cold. It was rainy. It was perfect for a run-heavy offensive game plan. They're going up against the Browns, who had a terrible run defense, and they ran the ball, 15 times? 12 times? I think only 12 were to running backs. I can understand the benching of Hill a little bit, but the guy was averaging 4.6 yards per carry, which was 2 yards more than Dalton was averaging on his passes. So it goes to the question of, in that situation, with the weather being as it is, the weakness being the Browns' run defense, why does your game plan call for 30-some passes and 12 designed runs? That's just... as much as we want to say Dalton was terrible, that's inexcusable by Hugh Jackson. That should have been a 40 or 50 run game, just like the Browns did to the Bengals. They saw a weakness, they exploited it. It's just, I really question Hugh with what he came to the table with on Thursday night.
It seems that's been a recent trend, AC, the offensive coordinator and the play calling and the game plans. And the Browns, going into that game Thursday night, had one of the worst rush defenses in the NFL, yet the Bengals really kind of avoided that altogether. Maybe it was due to the fact that they really only had one established back available, with Bernard being out for the game. I mean, I think Burkhead, he got in there, he had 4 carries for 12 yards. It's not great, but he did what he needed to do, I guess. But when you look at the numbers, 22 carries for 86 yards, that's 4 a carry. Mm-hmm. So I guess the question I have for you, why do you think they have abandoned the run?
Well, they got into panic mode after they fell behind a little bit, and even I think at one point when Hill fumbled, they were on the move. He had a nice little run, and they were only down 14-3 at that point at the beginning of the second quarter. And I say only, obviously 11 points is a big hill to climb, but you're at home. You're starting to feel like you're on the move a little bit. You get a score, even if it's a field goal there, you start to feel a little bit better about things, and you get a better grasp on the game. But they never they never got a grasp on the game, and they got into a panic mode. And oh man, we're down by quite a few points here. We got to start throwing the ball around. And Dalton was already having a shaky night. The play calling itself on those routes was shaky, and it just didn't work out. The thing I had my biggest problem with the night, and I guess it's going back to the Bengals in primetime in general. It's the Browns just kind of sat there and waited for the Bengals to make mistakes. They didn't do anything spectacular. Brian Hoyer, I think, had, 190, 195 yards passing. Nothing spectacular there. He did make a couple of nice throws, but, nothing to really blow your hair back. The running game of theirs really, it got going early when they had good field position because of turnovers, but a lot of that yardage was in the garbage time towards the end of that game. So, my problem was that the Browns didn't do anything special. They just kind of sat back, waited, and laughed at the Bengals as they made mistakes, and they continue to make these bonehead mistakes in these big games, and they become a laughingstock, even though they have a winning record this year.
Yeah, and with the help of the New York Jets, believe it or not, the Bengals are still right in the thick of it due to the Steelers losing to the Jets over the weekend. I want to piggyback a little bit more on the offensive coordinator, Mickey. And all this talk in the offseason was about how Jackson was going to bring this run-heavy style of offense, the ground and pound with the two backs that they have. I know Bernard was unavailable Thursday night, but when you look at the play of your quarterback, and when you see him struggling, which we saw very early, he was struggling to complete passes, and it looks more mental than it does physical. At what point do you stop calling the long, the deep routes that take time to develop when your offensive line's already struggling, and just kind of get some short passes going so that your quarterbacks can develop some sort of rhythm? And I counter that with, well, when they try to do that, his passes are batted down at the line. And I guess from a play calling standpoint, Mickey, where do you fault Hugh?
A ton, Nick, and that was kind of you and I kind of battled a little bit on Twitter, where you were talking about the run game, and that was kind of what I was expecting to see. When your kid's struggling to hit a ball, you pitch him a couple meatballs, to get his confidence back. They needed to do that, and they didn't. Dalton missed him. I would say that his biggest miss, aside from an interception, was that touchdown pass to Sanu, where that could have changed the game at that point. As bad as they were playing, that would have been absolutely huge. But the line let him down. Newhouse was a revolving door like we talked about. Balls getting batted down at the line means the defensive guys are holding their ground and still looking back at your quarterback to put their hands up. Like, your line is not bullying anyone. So that's terrible. We didn't stack anyone up on bubble screens. We didn't send anyone. The Bengals didn't have anyone in motion. I don't know, all night. They didn't do anything to disrupt what Cleveland was doing. The one screen I remember, Cleveland knew it was coming. It should have been a pick six. Even though Dalton threw the ball at the last second, held it a little long, threw it behind the receiver, which was great because otherwise that was probably going the other way for another touchdown. They didn't do any of that, and I do fault Hugh for that. And I don't understand why the Bengals, for as long as I can remember, have been so bad at in-game adjustments. And I can't really pick a game where they've done a good job of adjusting their game plan in a game, and it's sad that Hugh comes in, and the first few games we see this dynamic offense, and we're attacking, and they just look so darn confident, and now it's back to this kind of scared, like, well, let's try not to make a mistake, let's run these safe plays, and it's not working.
It's not working, Scott. I think a part of that is that teams now have some game tape on the way Jackson's going to call the offense. The first 3 weeks they look like gangbusters, and then the bye happened, and then everything else is kind of as we've gone on throughout the season, they seem to be trending downhill. So where do they go from here?
I don't know. Certainly some of it has to do with the amount of playmakers they're missing on offense, but you know, I mean, a good coordinator is gonna go with what he has, and he still has a strong running back in Hill, and for whatever reason, he doesn't seem to ride him. We've been talking about it all year long. We've been waiting to see Hill and Bernard in the backfield at the same time. I know Bernard's injured right now, but we've yet to see that. And, I think that would be one of the Bengals' biggest strengths is you get both of those guys on the field at the same time. I'm not sure where they go from here. I think they need to rely on Hill more. I think they need to get Dalton in rhythm more at the start of the game. I think he tried to do that with the short pass to Gresham, and that blew up. But I don't know that this is the second time in 4 weeks that Hugh has really laid an egg with a game plan.
Yeah, we all know about the shutout in Indy, but the offense did okay against the Ravens and the Jaguars. AC, where do they go from here?
I don't know. I really don't know. You can concoct certain plans and try and run the ball more, short passes. I mean, there's all that stuff. The thing that is happening, in my opinion, this year that didn't happen last year. There were weeks when the offense didn't play well, but the defense was outstanding, and that's how they found ways to win. Other weeks, the offense was outstanding and the defense was kind of blah, and they found a way to win. This year, even one of the phases doesn't seem to be clicking, and they're not, if one phase isn't clicking, the other phase isn't clicking, and they're just coming out with these performances that are just terrible. And I've been writing this slowly on the pieces I've been putting up this week, and I don't given how some of these units have been performing, the defensive units ranked number 31 overall, the offense is number 20 overall. They're low on a lot of statistical categories. I don't know how this team has 5 wins, to be honest with you. I mean, they're not putting together a 3-phase game where everything is working well. They're lucky if one phase is working well, and I'm still trying to figure out how this team has a winning record over halfway through the season, given some of their performances.
Yeah, and they still, they still can control their own destiny as far as the AFC North. Mickey, look, they've lost to the Browns each of the last 2 years. This isn't new. It's just the first time it's happened at home since 2007. And the fact that we've seen 2 very, very poor performances on the offensive side of the ball in recent weeks. Now they go to New Orleans. Where do they go from here, from an offensive standpoint?
They go to New Orleans, Nick, and they try to put a game together. I mean, the Bengals are in 1-week seasons, and I mean, we've talked for 26 minutes now, doom and gloom. But let me ask you this: just fire back at me. Who wins this division?
I honestly don't know.
Pick one team.
Well, I'm obviously rooting for the Bengals.
Right. No, but I mean, if you had to pick one, which one would you pick right now?
Nobody seems to want to win it.
It's up for grabs. It's up for grabs, and after the Steelers to the Jets, people aren't sold on the Browns. A lot of people are saying the Ravens, who I don't need to remind anyone, we swept this year. So the reason why this team has 5 wins is because they started out pretty darn good. They were giving up 11 points a game. You can argue the talent of the teams they played, but they won games they should have won. The reason why people are down on them is because their losses have all been brutal. They haven't been competitive. The tie leaves a sour, taste in everyone's mouth. Nugent makes that field goal. We're still looking real good right now. So the Bengals win New Orleans. That's a game that everyone thinks, they don't have a shot in, but New Orleans isn't some juggernaut team right now either. That changes your season. So I don't know. You would think that with the way this podcast started, and as down as everyone is in the chat room, that we're back in those 3-13 years, and it's not even close. We're a half game out of first in our division. We just got our butts kicked in prime time, which I was adamant to everyone time curse, but it exists. The Bengals fold in these games, and so I'd be happy if we don't play on prime time again, because the coaching staff doesn't know how to handle it and prepare the team for it. It's pretty sad that it's still not figured out, but it's it's pretty clear now that there's something to that. But the Bengals, I hope, have turned the page. Go into New Orleans, take that game, take a game in the Dome where they don't typically lose, even though I know they just did, and you're right back in it. So I don't know. Like I'm the eternal optimist, and I still think this team makes the playoffs.
Well, it's going to be a tough one. I mean, it's the Saints. Obviously, they play tough at the Superdome, and we'll be talking about that game here in a couple minutes. We'd love to hear your thoughts, on Bengals fans. If you want to get in touch, 404-946-3397, or if you're outside the country, you can get in touch with us via Skype as well. Let's welcome our man from South Beach, Fatal Content, to the program. Fatal, how you doing, buddy?
Cool freaking day. What's going on, gentlemen? How are you guys tonight?
We're a little battered, but we're here. We're ready for Sunday.
Oh yeah, me too, man. Last week, I don't even remember there was a game. I don't know what happened last week. I think I was in a coma. But
well, so were the Bengals.
Listen, man. Yeah, I know, right? I'll say this, man. I just echo what you guys say. The only thing I'll add on is just the sad part about this team is that there's just no accountability, man, and no identity. I mean, two things that you definitely need, even more so with injuries riddling your roster, and it's just unbelievable that no one's accountable. I'm watching the game, and Marvin Lewis isn't getting in anybody's face, which, that could be a little overstated sometimes, but sometimes you wish you would at least see it. Even if they continue to suck, you would like to see him at least change his demeanor post-game, during the game. It just looks like he's saying, well, this is happening again, let's stay with the process. It's like, no, change things up, get in somebody's face, hold people accountable, and the lack of identity is even more disturbing because injuries have forced us to an identity, and we still don't do what we need to do, which is run the ball and play defense. I think that the Browns came in and showed Hugh Jackson what he needed to do that game, and he did exactly what we were supposed to do, and we looked like we did what the Browns were supposed to do. It was incredibly frustrating to watch that, man. Prime time or not, it was terrible.
Yeah, Nick, I was going to hop in there, and I agree with Fatal. I heard on a radio show this week, and I thought it was a good point. Someone talked about Marvin Lewis and, kind of the way that he's coached the emotion out of this team. It's like you never see the team get excited, and if you take a look at their primetime games and their playoff games, the thing I've noticed is every time they play in a big game, I say the exact same thing. The team looks flat, and they look unprepared. And, that goes to coaching. That's something that has extended over the course of 3 defensive coordinators, or 3 offensive coordinators, I think 4 defensive coordinators, 3 quarterbacks. The only thing that's consistent is Marvin Lewis. I mean, every time they play, we say the same things. They look uninspired, unprepared, and flat. And, I just think that goes to coaching.
All right, Fatal. Hey, appreciate the call, but we got to run. We got other people who want to join in.
All right, definitely, man, guys. Take it easy. Who that?
Hooray. That's Fatal Content getting us started here on the program on the Jungle Line. Let's go to area code 703. Hi, who's this?
Hi, this is Richard Rolson.
Hey, Richard, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Hard to talk after last week's game and all that. It was interesting listening to you and the guys discuss it. And I was going to say, the thing that I've noticed this year, why I think this year is different than last year, is that for some reason our offensive line and defensive line just are not playing to what we've grown accustomed to. And I think that's the big reason. I mean, Dalton had a bad game last week, and I'm not going to blame the line for that. He was just bad. But I just don't think our offensive line is able to, exert itself on defenses like it has done in the past. In our defensive line, we were expecting Atkins, maybe a little wishful thinking to come back, from that injury so fast. And Petco just doesn't have the push that he used to have, and no one else has been able to step up. Marcus Hunt hasn't, stepped up. We knew the rookie Clark wasn't going to be able to, and Dunlap has shown flashes, but he's like a one-man show out there. And so I really think that this season kind of hinges on, can we turn around our offense and our defensive lines? And until we do that, we're going to have some up weeks, we're going to have some down weeks, and by the end of it, we might just be 500 team that doesn't make the playoffs. And I wanted to get your guys' take on that.
It's an interesting point. This is Anthony. It's an interesting point, and I agree with you. There's been some subpar performances from guys that you would not expect. Some people expected that out of Geno Atkins because he's still getting his legs under him from missing so much time and rehabbing from that injury. And luckily, over the past 2 to 3 weeks, he looks like he's finally kind of coming back into form a little bit. I'm putting up a post, or I did put up a post on Cincy Jungle this week, and it was about the Bengals' slow free agency period hurting this team. And I'm not talking about major forays and getting the big guys out there, but maybe adding some pass rushing help, maybe adding some rotational guys, maybe adding some competition at spots that maybe are perceived a little weaker or need some help, to be quite honest. And the team just kind of rested on its laurels and believed that they had already built a good team and didn't really do much outside of obviously picking some guys up in the draft. And they relied heavily, especially on the defensive line, they relied heavily on Margus Hunt and Will Clark to potentially remedy the loss of Michael Johnson as well as Robert Geathers. And to be quite honest, none of those guys are doing that. So, I think they shot themselves in the foot a little bit by not adding some depth and some competition at some spots that they could use some help at.
And I agree 100%, Richard, that the line play really has, I think, affected both sides of the ball. And we've seen it in years past on the defensive line. They were able to rotate guys in, and they're just not able to do that this year. Brandon Thompson being out for a significant amount of time didn't help. Let's be fair, Robert Geathers isn't the youngest guy on the team. I believe he might be the oldest vet on the team. So I guess that's what's been the most disappointing aspect of the defense is the lack of pressure, the lack of freshness that you see on the defensive line. That was their strength just not too long ago.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Now, see, this is to me where our new coaches, they need to set their mark. There are things that you can do to remedy that. Maybe you do blitz more than you were expecting to, and you trust your defensive backs to hold up a little bit better. And on your offense, they need to run the ball. That's all there is to it. I agree with you guys. I couldn't figure out why we were giving up on the run. We were never that far out of the game that, and we have a running back that can bust a big one. So, sometimes just getting the, keeping the ball for a while would have been helpful. The thing is, though, I do think that they still can turn it around. They blew the Indianapolis game, and then they came back and they won the next two games. They can do, and if they win the next two games on the road, then the loss to the Browns doesn't hurt quite as bad. They get that game back. Get some road wins, but they have to come out with some. As Scotty said, they've got to get their emotions back. This is an emotional sport, and playing it non-emotional is just not the way this team's going to win. So, anyways, I love you guys' show, and I'm glad you guys are there to talk me down on last Thursday night. So have a good one, and hopefully we get a win this Sunday.
All right. Appreciate the call, Richard Huday. That is Richard here on Inside the Jungle, bringing a little positivity back to the podcast. Something that we do tend to forget. This team is actually above 500 still, with a chance to win the division. Area code 314. How use this?
Hey, what's going on? This is Antoine.
Hey, what's up, Antoine? How you doing tonight?
Hey, all right. A little bit under the weather, so sorry about that. But I was trying to call in and kind of, you guys covered a lot of stuff tonight. I was trying to pick back off of what Fader was talking about earlier. He was talking about Marvin Lewis, getting in guys' face and kind of changing what our style we play and playing with, more fire and stuff like that. So I don't know if you guys heard Jeremy Hill's comments after the Browns game, saying, he thought they were worse than what they actually were. They get in the game and stuff like that. And even after Dante Whitner, shot down his comments saying, he's a rookie, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Jeremy Hill still, stood up and said, he doesn't back off those comments. I think we need, more people like that to to really get this team going. Because when we lose, it's concerning that we lose, but when we lose, like these past 3 games and even playoff games, like we lose pretty bad where we can barely move the ball loose. Like so, like Jeremy Hill to get this thing going, and we need just more fire and more people that actually show want to go out there and show that they want to win.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought up the comments that Hill made. It's good to see. No, I don't think he was right in saying what he said. I don't think it was a good idea. But I also, there were reports during that game Thursday night that he came off the sidelines throwing his helmet in anger, and it's good to see that fire. It's something we haven't seen from anybody on this offense since Chad was here, since TJ was here, and I like that. I think that. I think that's something that's needed, and maybe somebody needs to get in Andy Dalton's face to say, "Dude, wake up! What are you doing? Let's go! You're the leader."
Yeah, exactly. And then one last thing, you guys talking about the game plan and running the ball and stuff like that, changing, in game adjustments, and we've been pretty terrible at that. Like, because after this game, and even after the Colts game, it was Jackson who came out and said, it was all me. We should have run the ball more. And then after this game, Marvin Lewis came out after the game. We should have ran the ball more. Like, how come guys can't think of this during halftime? Why come out now?
Oh,
yeah,
that's an excellent point. I don't understand why they can't make adjustments. It seems to be something they have struggled with in the Marvin Lewis era. Maybe this game was the turning point. We shall see. Appreciate the call, Antoine. Hope you feel better, bud.
All right, man.
Uday, that's Antoine there in Missouri. Jeremy Hill's comments. Scott, I'll start with you. Advised, ill-advised? What's your take?
I thought it just made him look like an idiot. I mean, I guess we could say I like the fire, but I don't see that as fire. I see that more as stupidity. You just look like a sore loser. I mean, they just got mopped up and down the field. To come out and say anything other than the Browns were the better team just makes you look like a fool. So if I were Jeremy Hill, I would do less talking, more working on holding onto the football, and just going out and winning with their play instead of talking about how a team that just completely destroyed him on national TV is worse than he thought.
Mickey, or should I say Vicky? You're awfully delayed, and I can't hear you. So I don't know if Mickey, you're going to comment or.
I didn't hear your question. I heard you start talking, but then it broke up.
Okay. Were the Browns worse than you thought?
No, and I'm not big on the after game talk. If you want to talk about players I like in the fire, I like when Burfict's on the field because you can see his passion in his play. I don't care what someone says after the game, especially when you didn't really leave it all out on the field, it seems like. I don't consider that fire. I agree with a lot of the people that I want to see more of that fire, but saying it after the game is like what Scott said. It's sour grapes, and it makes you look like an idiot. I prefer to see Burfict, kind of tussle it up on the field a little more. That's the kind of fire I prefer.
You know what? I'm going to actually disagree with you guys. I actually thought it was an interesting statement, and he wasn't wrong. I mean, what did the Browns do? I talked about it earlier. What did the Browns do that was so spectacular? All they did is take care of the football and wait for the Bengals to make mistakes. And they ran the ball, especially late in the game, yes. But, I mean, they waited for the Bengals to turn the ball over, make mistakes in this big stage, as they always do. And they didn't do anything special. They just capitalized on the Bengals team that kept tripping over themselves. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with the fire he showed with throwing his helmet. Obviously, you don't want that to be a regular thing, but between his comments and the comments of George Aloka after the game, it shows that some of these young guys care. They don't want to lose, and they're baffled as to why this team keeps playing so poorly in these big moments. So I don't have a problem with it.
Before we move on and talk New Orleans Saints here. Let's welcome John from Kentucky here on the program. John, how you doing tonight?
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. You know, I had predicted that Mike Nugent would miss 2 extra points. Hey, I was close. He didn't make any extra points. But, hey, I'm going to say something nobody else is saying. I'll be honest. I thought Cleveland was all over Cincinnati's receivers. I mean, even if Dalton hadn't been pressured, it looked to me like had he tried to drill it to somebody, he was in dangerous water. That's just my opinion. I mean, Cleveland took Pittsburgh apart. They played Baltimore early this year. They blew up pass coverage at the end of the game. Had they not done that, they would easily have won. They'd be a 7-2 team right now. If they develop Johnny Manziel next year, Cleveland is starting to look like the Browns that I remember, you know, in the late 80s and early 90s. So I'm just saying, you know, nobody's giving Cleveland any credit here. They absolutely shut Cincinnati down. That's what I think. Now, granted, the coaching was not good in Cincinnati, and neither were a lot of other things, but none of that really surprises me. What does surprise me is how good the Browns look right now. And I'm not here to promote the Browns by any means, but, man, playing the way they did Thursday night, I think any team in the NFL would have had their hands full with Cleveland. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean the Browns certainly played well, John. There's no arguing that. And, you know, defensively they had everything. They knew everything that was going to happen, and they played a great game. But I still think that the Bengals could have done a better job. They could have shown up, and they didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you know, as we've said, our injuries, man, missing our 2 linebackers. I never thought that I'd miss Ray Maluga. But I tell you what, he's not in there, and especially Vontaze Burfict, as we know. You know, Tyler Eifert, there's no big tight end Dalton can really rely on. I mean, Gresham is so hot and cold, you know. So it really has added up this year, I think. But the season is not over. This division is still, you know, wide open. I didn't think Pittsburgh would lose to the Jets, but they did. Now, if the Jets can beat Pittsburgh at 1-8, then Cincinnati can beat them at what, 5-3-1? Is that what they are? So, you know, it's not over. It's not over till it's over. So, but I'm not a bit surprised if Cleveland doesn't win the division. I'm not surprised in the least, not after what I've seen from them this year. But at the same time, I won't be surprised if Cincinnati doesn't get it together. But they really are missing some key players. You know, I think we can all agree with that. You know, all sarcasm, all jokes aside, they really are missing a few wheels.
Yeah, I mean, but everybody is, John, and so I really hate to use that as an excuse, but I see your point. I see your point, and I understand your frustration.
Yeah, well, you know, my sister and brother-in-law, they're wanting to go see Pittsburgh play Cincinnati, and before Pittsburgh lost to the Jets, I just wouldn't hear of it. Well, now I might go. I might. We'll see how the team, you know, plays it out here. The coaching needs to get better, but Nick, like I've said a million times, you know, nobody ever seems to get in any real trouble in Cincinnati. Nobody ever gets fired. If you run a team like that, those guys make a lot of money and don't have a lot of responsibilities. So what is going to motivate them to do any better? That's the question.
That's a good point. Appreciate the call, John. Safe travels.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Hooday.
Hooday.
John from Kentucky here on Inside the Jungle. I'm glad he brought up coaching. And we talk about Marshall Newhouse being the free agent signing in the offseason. We've seen them struggle with draft picks on the offensive line, and there's been one constant on that offensive line for how many years, guys? Just saying. Maybe it's time for some new ideas there up front. Appreciate everybody's phone calls about the Browns game. Let's look ahead now to this weekend's game, the Saints. Fresh off their overtime loss, a heartbreaking loss. In fact, a loss where Drew Brees didn't play great, turned the ball over late, or I should say turned the ball in overtime, which led to the field goal that let the 49ers win the game. So that snapped their home winning streak. So now you've got two teams coming off of some pretty maybe that loss for the Saints isn't a bad loss, but it's still a loss, too of a loss, with the Bengals having some extra time to prepare for the Saints. So, Mickey, I'll start with you. On the road in New Orleans in a loud environment. Thankfully, it's not a primetime game. It's just a normal 1 o'clock scheduled game for Andy Dalton. Your thoughts on the Saints?
Well, first of all, don't come at me with that prepare stuff, because we've already established that is definitely a weakness of this team. But I think this is the parts of the Saints that scare me are the tight end, which for years has been just terrible for the Bengals to cover, and then a strong running game that they've really come on. But I think the Bengals are getting a little bit healthier. I honestly think they have a great shot in this game. I think the Bengals have this knack of bouncing back just when you think they're done, at least in the last 5-6 seasons. And this is a perfect time to do that. This is a game where they're the spread, I don't know what it is. I'm guessing it's
last
probably
I saw was 6.5.
See, so no one's really giving them a shot. So I think this is the type of game where the Bengals will step up, and it's really at this point it's needed. So I really feel like the Bengals matchups here, especially with some key injuries on the Saints defense, it's a game where they can go in there and surprise the league. I don't really think it's a surprise, as close as we are to this team, and then knowing how down the Saints are. It is a game they should handle, but I don't know. This is where your season's kind of on the line. They don't necessarily need this game, but this would be big in getting right in the ship. You get a couple more guys healthy the next week, and maybe you can start making a run.
I look at the numbers, Scotty. Mark Ingram, 27 carries for 120 yards against a pretty stout 49ers defense. We know the issues of our defense up front and missing some linebackers. That doesn't bode well for the Bengals.
Yeah, it's a scary thought. Mark Ingram is finally looking like the guy that won the 2009 Heisman Trophy Award. I was taking a look at him today. He's averaging 4.8 yards per carry, which is not a good thing to see when your defense is also giving up about 4.8 yards per carry. So, I think that's going to be key for the Bengals. I think they'll focus mainly on Drew Brees. So, they're going to have to stop Mark Ingram with one less guy in the box because of Drew Brees. So, if they can't do that, Mark Ingram likely will make them pay.
It's if you're going to face this Saints team led by Drew Brees, I think that this game and this season is about as winnable of a game that you're going to get. They're 4-5. They're not playing all that great. They're losing some games. But it's Drew Brees, Hall of Fame quarterback. It's going to be a tough game regardless. I look at this game and it reminds me a lot of last year's midseason game against the Detroit Lions. In Detroit. It's an NFC Dome team. They're playing kind of 500-ish football. They're a dangerous team that can pass the ball very well and do some things offensively. So I kind of look at that as kind of a little bit of a barometer for this game. What's interesting, and Scott, you talked about it, the Saints are actually very good at running the football this year. I think they're number 6 overall in the NFL running the football. And they're actually good at defending it as well. I think they're like 11th or 12th overall against the run. So a lot of common sense would say, hey, Bengals, run the football, keep Drew Brees in that high-flying offense off the field. But you may look at this and say this could be a good rebound game for Andy Dalton because the Saints' passing defense is ranked like 24th overall, I think, and then they have one of their better corners, Keenan Lewis, hurt this week. So I would think that this could be a decent game for the Bengals offense to maybe get going a little bit, build some confidence, and if they are able to beat this pretty good New Orleans team, I think it's a great confidence builder going forward.
Yeah, Anthony, you're right. They are. Their run offense is 6th in the league, which is shocking for a Saints team that's known for high flying passing offense, and their run defense actually is respectable this year at 11. So their weakness is through the air. So we should see, Dalton should have his opportunities to make some plays down the field and hopefully get himself back on track.
Yeah, I mean, I like what Anthony said. It's a winnable game. I mean, people in the chat room are kind of starting to throw out their predictions, and I'm going to pick on one of them, Chris Berrien, calling 35-7 win for the Saints, and I really feel like that's a prediction that someone made based off of the Saints' previous reputation. The Saints haven't scored 35 points yet this season. They almost opened the season with a loss to the Browns. They've had a couple really bad losses. The Cowboys just beat up on them. I see this as a winnable game for the Bengals, and based on the fact that I think this is a much better team than what we obviously saw Thursday night. The Bengals are live in this game, and I like their chances.
I like their chances too. I think that the fact that the Saints over the weekend lost helps. They're 4-5, but they are 3-1 at home. They play very well at home. I mean, that is their bread and butter. It's tough to go into, and I think that loss was the first loss at home for Sean Payton since 2010. So that tells you a lot about their home field advantage. I think getting on the road is probably a good thing for this team right now. With everything that happened on Thursday night, getting away from home, getting away from these rabid fans, the boos that Dalton had ringing down, I think this is a chance for them to go into New Orleans, Anthony, and not necessarily shock the world, but I think right now, I'm not saying it's I think it's definitely a winnable game.
Yeah, I'm smiling because, I mean, the Saints crowd couldn't be that much more harsh to the Bengals in their offense than so the last week at home, and the home crowd kind of getting behind all those boos and everything. But, yeah, I mean, Nick, we were just talking about how this game is just kind of, at least in my opinion, oddly reminiscent of the Lions game last year. I think there's a lot of similarities there, and you know what? There's not going to be excuses for poor play by the quarterback in a dome. So if Dalton isn't hitting the passes, it's a dome. There's not wind in there, so that's going to be on the quarterback there. But the Bengals have to come up with better game plans, and they're going to need to do some things. And we've kind of ripped Hugh Jackson a new one this episode, but I think we can't really overlook some of the bad things that Paul Guenther has done with this defense. They were number 3 overall last year, and they're number 31 overall at this point right now this year. So to me, that speaks to coaching, and I'm going to tell you what, and I'd like to hear the other guys' thoughts on this too, but I'm going to tell you what, if Drew Brees happens to make one of the few errant throws that he does during the course of the season, and a Bengals defender gets their hands on it, they have to catch that football and make an interception, because otherwise, if they give Drew Brees a second chance, this game will get out of hand very quickly.
Scott, would you agree? Get to Drew Brees. We saw that on Sunday. The Niners were able to get to him and force some turnovers.
No doubt. I mean, this is a 4-5 team. It's never felt like a 4-5 team's as good as this Saints team. But Drew Brees will throw passes, like Anthony said. He will throw passes that are available to be picked off. He has 10 interceptions on the year. So the Bengals secondary should have chances to pick him off. And I think that's the way they can win this game, is a big play on defense, or a big play on special teams that kind of swings the game. So, Anthony's right. When they get a chance to make a play on the ball, they're going to have to capitalize, something they have struggled the last couple weeks on.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say the same thing Scott said. The defense, has had the opportunity to get a ton of turnovers that we've just left out there. That has to stop. The other side, if the offense is struggling, the defense needs to pick up, for them when they have those opportunities, and we haven't been able to do that. If Drew Brees gift wrap you a turnover, you better take advantage of it.
Just looking at some of these numbers too, and for as much flack as Dalton got for going 10 of 33 against the Browns, Colin Kaepernick was 14 of 32 against the Saints. But you look at also, too, the 49ers were able to run the football against the Saints defense. Frank Gore, 23 carries for 81 yards. So I'd like to think that we will see Hugh literally turn the ball, tell Andy Dalton, turn around and hand the ball off to Jeremy Hill as much as possible on Sunday, which leads us right to something that we do each and every week here on this program.
Hey, ladies, quit your babbling, because now's the time in the show when all the boys pull out their cojones and make bold predictions.
All right, it's time to get bold. Scotty B with the bold mustache there. Beam me up, Scotty. Give me something bold.
I don't know how bold this is because he's already done it once this year, but maybe this is wishful thinking. I say Jeremy Hill gets – I think Hugh Jackson learns from last week, and he feeds Jeremy Hill, and Hill responds with 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, much like Jacksonville.
All right, so he's saying Jeremy Hill has a big day. How about you, Mickey?
Mine's simple. Dalton's putting up a 4 spot.
Yeah, well, last week I said he would have, 6 or more?
He's getting 4 touchdowns. Start him in your fantasy league. Take it to the bank.
All right, so Mickey's saying, is that all through the air?
I'm not going to go there. I don't care if he runs it in or he catches a pass. He's finding the paint 4 times.
All right, so 4 touchdowns for Dalton. AC, how about you? Give us something bold.
The Bengals defense has given up 100 yards rushing each of the last 7 games, consecutive games. The Saints have the number 6 rushing offense, as we said just a little bit ago. I'm going to say the Bengals get off that streak and hold the Saints to less than 100 yards rushing, even as poorly as their run defense is and has been playing, and allow no touchdowns on the ground as well.
Is that because Drew Brees is going to throw for 500?
Well, I don't even want to go there, but baby steps, 1 step at a time, buddy.
Oh, that's great. I like it though. That's bold, especially with the current run this defense is on. I say, because we've had Dalton, we've had Hill. You know whose name we haven't really had a chance to mention a whole lot of as far as the good things that's happened this year. I say A.J. Green has a big day, 3 touchdown catches, which will coincide with Mickey's bold prediction of 4 for Dalton. So I'll say A.J. Green, off of a poor performance against the Browns. I'll say he has 3 touchdowns for the Bengals this week. Some of the other bold predictions here in the chat room. Chase Lee says Bengals fans quit feeling sorry for themselves. I don't think that's ever possible as a Bengals fan, unless we win the Super Bowl. That might change some things. Chris Berrien says Bengals get 3 sacks. Bill Nichols, a touchdown for Greg Little. That's a good one. There's a name we haven't mentioned yet here on the podcast, considering all the big talk he had a week ago about playing against the Browns. Oy. So those are some of the other bold predictions here in the chat room. Thanks to everybody who's provided those as well. Score predictions. How's it going to look Sunday? What are the Bengals going to do? What are the keys to victory? I'll start with you, Anthony Cosenza.
Keys to victory, I'm going to go a little cliche, I guess. Don't turn the ball over and capitalize on opportunities to get turnovers. That's basically been the story of the Bengals the past few weeks, both in wins and losses. So that's a big key. Stopping the Saints' run offense, as weird as that sounds, with Drew Brees on their team is a big key. I picked the Bengals to lose this game as we began the season. I also picked the Bengals to split with the Browns, if you remember that as well. So that's the only silver lining I can take out of the Bengals losing to Cleveland last week. I'm going to say 37-31 Saints.
All right, he's going negative. Understandable after what we watched Thursday night. So he's saying high-scoring game, though, 37-31. Mickey, how are you?
I think it's going to be high-scoring, too. I'm going 36-30 Bengals.
All right, so you're going in favor of the Bengals, but a very, very similar score line. All right, Nikki says 36-30. Beam me up, Scotty. Score prediction.
I think people were reading my notes before the show. I picked the Saints to win this game at the start of the year. I still think they'll win it. I do think the Bengals bounce back a bit, high scoring. Saints 38, Bengals 34.
Wow, we're all up in the 30s. Yeah, all four of us predicted before the season that this would be a loss for the Bengals. I just can't bring myself to do that. I can't. I think they win. I think they pull it out. I think the fact that the Saints lost in overtime in a very hard-fought game against the 49ers team, I think they're going to have a little bit of a hangover. And they're going to start a new streak there in the Superdome, and that is lose 2 in a row. I say Bengals win 28-24, your final score. Lord Funkington here in the chat room says, bold score 38-14, we're going to get plowed. Okay. It's amazing how quickly the good feelings here surrounding this team has evaporated and gone completely the other way. I get it. It was a rough game Thursday night. There's no question about that. But I think they bounce back and win in New Orleans. It's time now for something we also do each and every week.
Shout outs!
Time to do some shout outs. I'll start with you, AC. Give me a shout out.
I have two, Nick, and both are and or were in the chat room. I don't believe I've ever shouted him out before, but he's a longtime listener, called in tonight and said, even though he said he was under the weather, so Antoine Malone, great caller, great listener, always enjoy hearing from him. And then a guy I'm not too familiar with, and I apologize if he is a regular, Quentin Lewis, who was in the chat room. Good input tonight, and obviously paid me a nice compliment right when I joined the chat room tonight. So Quentin Lewis and Antoine Malone are my two shout-outs this week.
Pale in the chat room says, Bengals 15, Saints 6. That would be a titanic defensive struggle there at the Superdome. Or the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, I guess is what they call it nowadays. Scott Bantel, shout-outs for this week.
I'm going to give one. I don't know that I've ever shouted him out. He's a good friend of the program, always in the chat room, tweets back and forth a bunch, and that's Brett Bradford Sr.
Solid. Brett is in the chat room quite a bit, and he's also on the Twitter as well. Mickey Menser, you're typing furiously over there. Give us some shout-outs for this week.
Mine's going simple. Seatown Bungle, even though he picked on me during the game about Dalton, because that seems to be what people like to do, I'm going to shout him out because he was at least civil about it.
Solid. I like it. I'm going to give a shout-out to my main man, Anthony Cosenza's good pal, Mark Sanchez. Mark Sanchez won me my fantasy game over the weekend because I picked him up off of waivers. Tom Brady, who was my quarterback, was on a bye, so Mark Sanchez was available, and has now led me to my 6th straight win in the Patreon Fantasy League. So I'm going to give a shout-out to Mark Sanchez, the birthday boy on Monday night, with the best game of his career, believe it or not. And amazing what it all comes down to coaching, Anthony Cosenza.
He killed it. He killed it. He had a great game, and I think we talked about this a few weeks. We saw him. My family and I saw him on his bye week. My brother and I coached him in high school baseball, and I like to think that we brought him some good luck. Not to say that we made Nick. Yeah, not to say that we made Nick Foles go get injured, but we gave some good vibes over to Mark, and I'm very happy that he's playing well.
He had a good game. Congratulations to him. Hopefully we'll see him in the Super Bowl. That would be kind of nice if we could make that happen. The Eagles are on a roll. But, yeah, that's my shout-out. As cheesy as it is, Mark Sanchez won me my fantasy game over the weekend, and so kudos to him. Maybe Chip Kelly could maybe we can arrange some sort of meeting with him and Andy Dalton. That'd be kind of nice as well. I want to touch on some unfortunate news. I understand that we at times bash Carson Palmer on this program due to the way he left, but sad news that he tore his ACL days after signing his new extension. This is the second time in his career now he has torn his ACL after signing a contract extension within that same week. disappointed for him. I know that the Cardinals are on a roll. I'll be interested to see what they do with Drew Stanton at the helm now that Palmer is out for the year. Final thoughts as we wrap up episode 171. Anthony Cosenza.
Winnable game coming up. It's a game that the Bengals, if they win, I think it completely turns around the entire season and builds some good momentum. The Bengals really need to start making up some ground because I believe they have 7 or 8 games left, right? And I think 5 of those are on the road. So they're going to need to start doing some work and playing better on the road if they are going to make a playoff game. And if they do make the playoffs, they need to start proving that they can beat good teams and good teams in prime time. Otherwise, it's going to be the same one-and-done story that we've seen the past few years.
Thank you, as always, AC, for your work on the podcast. I appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you, and thanks for shouting out Mark, buddy. Always appreciate that one.
Beat me up, Scotty. Final thoughts as we wrap up episode 171. The Stash Man, do you need a comb?
Not yet, but eventually by the end of the month, I think I'll comb this baby. Maybe part it right down in the middle. It does get in the way of my beer foam, though. So, final thoughts. Big game for the Bengals, man. The way I look at it, I chalk this one up as a loss. Denver, and I see a split with the Steelers, which means 9 wins at the best. The AFC's got 11 teams above 500, so 9 wins. I'm not sure that's going to cut it for the playoffs. So I think they need to steal one. Maybe this is the one. Either way, they got to start playing better because they have to get the ones in Houston and Tampa. So a big game, even if not a win, just to get back on track.
Thank you as always, Scotty B. Glad you're part of the show. Glad you're contributing, doing some good stuff there at the Jungle as well, and also doing well in the Patreon Fantasy League. I think I'm 1 or 2 spots behind you. I was 0-4. I've now won 6 in a row. I'm pretty pumped about that.
Yeah, I'm sitting atop my division, just showing people what's up.
Oh, that's fantastic. Mickey had to bounce early tonight. Mickey, appreciate everything you do for the show, for the website. If you missed the show live and you want to join us every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, you can at cincyjungle.com. We record the show live each and every Wednesday night. Don't forget to also join me Sunday immediately following the game against the Saints for Inside the Jungle postgame. Get your thoughts in, have your thoughts heard, and you can take a listen, call in. We're the only call-in show immediately following Bengals games, so check it out right here at cincyjungle.com immediately following the game on Sunday. Thanks again for all the iTunes reviews. You've been fantastic. If you like what we're doing here on Inside the Jungle, this is a listener-supported show, and we appreciate all of your support. Check us out at spnt.tv/Patreon. You can help contribute and help the show move forward as we progress here. Coming up, believe it or not, the year's almost over. 2015 will be here before you know it. Before we get out of here, also special thanks as well to our associate producers, Larry Rolston, Andy Lanham, and Mike Vardy as well. That's going to do it. Episode 171 of Inside the Jungle is in the can. Inside the Jungle is an SPNT production. For more information about our other podcasts, log on to spnt.tv. Check out our great work over at cincyjungle.com. Until next time, till Sunday, hopefully we'll see a Bengals win. See you next Wednesday. Racing, Scott, and Nicky, I'm Zooks. Hooday, everybody!
Sanchez Hooday!
Anthony, did you like my my Anthony dance tribute?
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
It looks even better with my mustache. Isn't that Will? Doesn't Will Ferrell do that in?
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
What movie is it?
It's a Wedding Crashers.
Yeah,
He's like talking about crashing the funerals.
Crashing
like,
funerals.
More for us.
Yeah,
more for us. I never know what she's doing back there. Meatloaf.
You're a legend. Yeah. I do want to see Dumb and Dumber 2 that comes out this weekend.
Have you been seeing my posts?
No.
On Facebook? Oh man, I've been every day I post a new my favorite moments from Dumb and Dumber. I'm going on Saturday night.
Oh yeah.
I've been posting my top 5 Dumb and Dumber moments. So today was day 3, and it was the what did I put? Oh, the scene where they're talking about going to Aspen. I don't know, Lloyd. The French are assholes. I can't.
Well,
that is my.
I gotta say, do you guys understand the line that he says there, where he says, "Where the women flock like the salmon of Capistrano"? Do you understand that line?
What's to understand?
Well, do you understand that reference?
No.
Okay, so it's actually the swallows of Capistrano. The swallows are a breed of bird that go to San Juan Capistrano, and they migrate to and from every year. It's like a whole big thing, and that's San Juan Capistrano is where I just moved to. So yeah, so when he says the salmon of Capistrano, it's actually the swallows of Capistrano.
No, that's
that's the whole joke behind that deal. That's more of a regional thing for us out here, I guess. I don't know.
I saw a NASCAR qualifying this week. One of the I can't remember whose car it was. It had all sorts of Dumb and Dumber advertising all over it. And the hood was just a huge picture, almost covered the entire hood of Lloyd's face.
I'm kind of in the minority.
Harry.
I actually think Jeff Daniels is in it than in the first one than Jim Carrey. I mean, I love Jim Carrey, but the fact that Jeff Daniels is like this dramatic actor all the time, and he plays this gigantic goofball. I don't know. I think I almost find him a bit more funny. It's weird.
He's so good. I was so upset this week, and I floated it out to my wife to go on Friday night, and not only was I shot down, I found out that she really doesn't like the first Dumb and Dumber.
What?
And I informed her that's a very good thing. I didn't know that before we got married, because that may have been.
My wife and I, we watched that movie Saturday night. We pulled it up on Netflix and we watched it together.
Lovely.
Saturday night, we got a sitter and everything. Man. I cannot wait.
We went and saw Interstellar this last weekend. That movie was gnarly.
It's no Dumb and Dumber 2.
No.
Come on now.
No, it's not.
Oh man, thank you for stalling for me. That was very.
How was your episode break, buddy?
Oh man, that's a first. That's a first in Inside the Jungle. This is what you get when you tune in live, folks. You would have never known had you listened to the podcast.
Nick, it was funny. I debated a couple of times throughout the show. I went running tonight, and I was about halfway done, and about as far away from my house as I could be, either direction. And I had to do the stop and pee in someone's yard, and then I had to do the random stop at UDF because I wasn't going to make it. I was about to have the runners explode. It was bad.
Nice.
Jeez, what do you guys eat?
On the show too.
Well, I had McDonald's for dinner, and I should have known better.
That'll do it every time.
I think I had too much coffee today.
Oh.
You can't drink that much coffee and then go running. It's like milk on a hot summer day. It's a bad choice.
Oh, this is making me so nauseous right now. I can't even believe it.
Well, I hate to cut this party short.
Yeah, let's end there, please. Can we end there?
I'm going to. I got to go prep and go pack my lunch for tonight. It's Thursday for me. So.
All right, fellas.
It was good. Enjoyed the show. Thank you for stepping in for me for that brief moment.
It's good. I think we handled it all right, if I do say so myself.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing it on the podcast.
You're gonna pinpoint. That's the moment right there. That's right.
Everybody in the chat room, thanks for tuning in. You guys are awesome. We'll talk to you on Sunday, hopefully after a Bengals win.
Yeah. See you, fellas.
Take it easy, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.
Good day.